What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello, my fellow lions and lionesses. Super appreciate you tuning into this podcast. The value is so amazing what you're about to tap into in this episode. One thing I do want to share is this was recorded on Zoom. And so you may hear on my end a little bit of fuzziness, a little bit of scratchiness, but I can promise you that if you can stick with it, it gets better in the episode and the value totally trumps the quality. So, you live and you learn. That is the nature of entrepreneurship and creation. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for being in all the technological hiccups. And I think you'll really, really like this episode. So just wanted to give you a preview and a caveat to the technology is not totally at my standard, and it is what it is. You live and you learn, but let's get into it. I'll see you in the episode. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Project Lioness podcast. This is Dr. Mel, your co-host, and today I am super excited to be welcoming my guest, Jennifer Alley, your ally in alignment. And you all will hear her multiple times on this podcast because she is a wealth of knowledge and one of my closest, dearest friends. And today we are talking about something that I have noticed is very important happening in the culture, and that is our own personal evolution and dealing with turbulence and dealing with fear and dealing with alignment. But before we get into that, let me share with you how badass this woman really is. So Jennifer Alley Kern has a BBA in international business and a master's in psychology. She is a thought leader and the national award-winning author of The Drama-Free Way, Authentic Thriving in a Chaotic World. As a keynote speaker and master trainer, she has spoken in organizations such as the Mayo Clinic, IBM, Weight Watchers, American Business Women's Association, as well as numerous conferences and organizations. She started her business Intrinsic Solutions in 2009, where she works with entrepreneurs, leaders, creatives, and healers, helping them thrive in spite of increasing challenges, drama, and chaos in the world at large. She leads them through a journey of personal up-leveling, which empowers solution-seeking, successful outcomes, and relationship building with less struggle and less stress and more ease and flow. Jennifer is the creator of the Inner Alignment Model and the Lead in Alignment System. And in 2018, she founded Thrive Fiesta Events, which I have had the pleasure of being a part of. Originally, she's from Minneapolis, and Jennifer currently calls West Palm Beach, Florida, her home. She's a polyglot, speaking 4 languages, and when she's not busy enjoying her work, Jennifer loves Latin dancing, performing stand-up comedy, working out, traveling, watching American football, and lounging about doing absolutely nothing. But she is a great teacher of the power of that. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Mel. I always love being with you.
Yes, even if it's on Zoom, although I do prefer...
Any way we can do it.
Yeah, although I do prefer hanging on the beach with you in Florida, but alas, this will do.
Sure.
Something that I want and really want our audience to know too, and if people haven't seen us frolicking around the beaches of West Palm Beach on Instagram, is that the reason why I continuously bring Jennifer on to things is because she is a really close friend of mine. I have been a student of her work. She has really helped me in my own leadership, my own up-leveling, my own how the hell do I navigate when shit hits the fan. as a multi-business owner, as an entrepreneur, and really just a woman on the planet who is focusing on living in alignment. So I really value what Jennifer has to share. She's been a huge leader for me, a supporter of me. We met, what was it, 2015 in a women's leadership group, leadership circle?
16. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just a little baby. I wasn't even a chiropractor yet. And now look at me.
Still in school, weren't you? You were just about to finish.
Yep, still in school. So Jennifer has been huge, a huge catalyst for me, not only as a mentor and a leader, but also really just a friend. I mean, I travel across the country to see this woman because we just have a really rocking time together. So again, thank you for being here, and I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm so excited to be here. So happy to connect with you always and to talk about some ideas and concepts today that I think will be really helpful for people.
Yeah. And I'm curious as we dive into this, something that you and I were jamming on that I've been noticing within myself and clients and people that I simply surround myself with is 2024 has definitely shown itself to be a year of catalytic experiences. And I'm seeing a lot of clients in particular navigate some big transitions. I call it some, when shit hits the fan moments. It can feel very chaotic, whether it's leaving a relationship or it's completely pivoting and transitioning in business. Maybe it's a big health thing that happens. And I think oftentimes we can, if we're not aware and conscious of our patterns and in alignment with our own true purpose, it can feel like the world is consuming us. And I've noticed a lot more of that in 2024 that I have in a while. So I'd love to jam on this and how, what are these catalytic experiences all about? I know that's a world that you play in when it comes to your clients, but it's just something that I've noticed within my own life, within my clients, and I would love to support our audience in like, how do we navigate these things in our own personal evolution?
I mean, that's a big question, and I think there are different angles to look at it. But fundamentally, I think the first thing is understanding that these experiences really are there to serve you because what they're doing is they're pushing you into new ways of being. They're creating an expansiveness where you can't keep operating the same way.
Nope.
They challenge you to look at yourself, look at your world, look at your beliefs, your thought patterns, your habits, your energy, everything in a way that you wouldn't have without having had these experiences. So first and foremost, even as shitty as they are fundamentally there to serve you. And I think that that's a really powerful perspective to even start with when we're beginning a conversation about addressing these kinds of things.
Right. And that's something that I notice too, is when people have these moments, you kind of have a choice point, right? Where you can choose to see it as serving you and live into the paradigm of like, oh, how can I become more conscious and aware of my patterns, my alignment, my energy, which we're going to get into in this podcast. But how can I use this as an opportunity to choose and become conscious of my living? Or the other side of it, unfortunately, and this is maybe my own projection, but I see people continuously live into the same patterns and just see it as like, well, life is consuming me, or the consciousness of like becoming a victim. I know you talk a lot about that in the drama triangle, right? Where we live into these patterns and we're not conscious. And then life just keeps throwing shit at us and we become and live into that victim archetype, right? And I don't know if you've seen that more in your clients or people that you work with, but it's definitely a thing I'm seeing. Like there's these choice points happening where it's like, okay, let's wake up or not, right?
Yeah, I think it's not actually a choice until there's something that happens for the individual that they get that sort of that epiphany moment of, oh my God, this is me.
That's fair. Yeah.
And so up until that point, they're continuing to cycle within what has been pervasive within the human collective consciousness, which is very much this drama paradigm where people will fall into one of three categories, either the victim that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Victim requires a persecutor or a villain. And then to complete that triangle, you need a hero or a rescuer. And so when things are when it feels like things are happening to you, you're naturally going to adopt a victim mode victim mentality. And I think that that's part of the function of why so many people are going through this now, is because the collective of humanity is getting this big surge in evolution of consciousness. And in order to do that, you have to come into those epiphany moments, those wake up moments of, oh my gosh, like this is me. And I actually have, it's my responsibility, but it's also my responsibility, which means I have influence, I have control. But making the shift from life is happening to me to life is happening for me, that is the journey in many regards.
That's like one of my favorite lines, right? And we're going to talk about something that I love that you bring, Jennifer, is how some of the how, right? It's first getting like, well, why, being conscious enough, but then something I know that you're really great at with your clients is, okay, so how do I navigate these things? And we're going to talk about that later in the episode, but that's something I have appreciated you in your leadership and how you work with people, is seeing life differently, which can be scary sometimes, right? Like, okay, so if I'm the one that's responsible, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And I know you yourself have had some interesting catalytic moments in your life experience. If there's anything that would be of value to share there for the audience, of like how you got into this, and you don't need to share like your whole life story, because that would be, of course, many episodes. Maybe we create that. I think something that the audience always appreciates is, how the hell did Jennifer like get into this, right? Because what you're sharing, I think what you're sharing in understanding that life is happening for us, shifting the paradigm that we are the common denominator in that all those archetypes we play, like that can be very pivotal alone. Just that opening of our consciousness, right? So what catalytic moments have you experienced that have allowed you to step into this level of leadership and, person on the planet in your life?
Yeah. I've had a number of them, as you can imagine, because this has been, I'm pushing probably like 20 years on this path of awakening, probably maybe even 25. And so there have been a number of things that have catalyzed transition and transformation for me. For me, a lot of it has come through personal relationship. For some people, it comes more through like health challenges. For other people, it comes through like finances and job changes and those kinds of things. For me, it's been a lot more through personal relationship. So I think the first time I really was conscious of starting to take responsibility for my own world was I had been engaged when I was like late 20s, and I had a disruption in that process. And I realized pretty quickly, like, it would be really dishonest for me to move forward with this. And yet I felt like kind of trapped and stuck. And I did ultimately make the choice that was in integrity, which was to not move forward with it. But going through that decision-making process, it really made me pull things apart and look at myself. And that was like the first phase, right? There have been other iterations of that over the years. And so I think, to look at your own life and your own patterns and see, like, where does this show up for me? Because, certainly I've had like a lot of expansion experiences in my career path as well. A lot of those were more my choice than it happening to me. And I will always kind of challenge myself to grow. So I'll create circumstances where I make like these big goals. And then it's like, let's get it or bust. You know what I'm saying? I've had my health stuff too, but certainly nothing like life shaking. So for me, that has come through that. So I think for people to think about, what are the things the trends that you've seen in your own life about where you tend to get shaken up. It could be a different area of life. For some people, like if they really are going to have like the big boom, it's going to come in like different areas at the same time. And I think those sometimes can be like little mini, like, instead of like a big, like, let's deconstruct your whole life, it's more like let's give you like a surge or a push past this level. And people will tend to have things kind of coming all at the same time. Usually they happen in threes, right? So you could have things happening in different areas, but they're not, again, not all of them are going to be like something that totally deconstructs everything for you. But starting to even look at that as like, where are my trends? Where are my patterns?
Yeah.
So for me, that's what it was. And then I did end up later getting married to a different person, ended up getting divorced. And so, that was another relationship thing. And so that was another like big surge. And then partnered with that one, I really invested myself significantly in building my business at that time. One of the belief systems that was keeping me stuck, cycling in relationships that really weren't fundamentally healthy, was that I need a man to provide for me and take care of me and protect me financially and otherwise. And that was a big one that cracked open for
Ooh.
me. And I was really trying to get out of an unhealthy marriage. And so once I had sort of like the epiphany that came in, I remember the moment that it happened. It's like that was like one of those stark moments where I had been looking at for months and months and months, how can I unravel this? How can I leave the situation that I'm in, et cetera? And I was standing in the living room one day and all of a sudden this idea, it's like it just dropped straight into my brain. It's like, Jennifer, just go make more money. Like the most obvious thing in the world, right? And I stood there and I was like, oh my God, So then I was like, I'm like, go big or go home. So I had to like completely leave the marriage, which did give me a foundation of financial stability at that time because of other ways my energies was invested in addition to my business, but not solely my business. And so I really like invested into the process of who I was becoming through that transition, really dialed down how I was giving myself to relationship, exited that, and then dialed up how I was giving myself to my business.
Mm.
And I made some like pretty significant goals.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did.
I just to like pinpoint that for a moment, I thank you for answering that question because something that I love about you is your ability to be tapped into these things of higher consciousness and spiritual alignment and simultaneously be super down to earth because you have lived experience, which I think not only all the accolades we said that you accomplished in your bio, but you have lived experience and you walk your talk. Like you are a leader on the planet of walking your talk, which is sometimes rare to find. I'm hoping that it's not as rare, the more people start to wake up to this, but really doing the work that you teach people because you also have lived experience and you've applied it. And I think it's so valuable to hear from a leader of like, hey, I'm here now, but here's some of my journey of what I have experienced that's allowed me to evolve and not live into like, well, this happened to me and, I'm blah, 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 that can drag down our energy. Right. And something that I see in you is you're such an alchemizer. And sometimes we don't see how things actually served us until we look back and say, oh shit, that was the moment standing in my living room that apparently I needed to be in that experience to get the download of like, hey, Jennifer, just go do this. And it can be so simple like that, right? Like you shift your state, you shift your body, you shift your emotions, you shift your energy, which I know you teach on, but it can be that simple where when we live in the realm of chaos, I know you talk a lot about that in your book. You live in this realm of chaos, you're not even available for the thoughts like that. You're not even available for the business ideas of like, hey, just go make more money. But literally, sometimes our system isn't available to receive that type of information, right?
So let me just build on what you're saying because there's like a backdrop of information that's really important in order to
Yeah,
land
please,
the concept. And it's
please.
that it was 8 months preceding that moment
Mm-hmm.
that 8 months prior to that, I had tried to leave, got an apartment, got a place to live, moved stuff, was going to go. The first night I was there, I cried my eyes out till about 1 o'clock in the morning, finally fell asleep. 4 o'clock in the morning, woke up, panic stricken. I walked out into the living room of this little place, and I remember my knees hit the floor, and I was just shaking with terror. And it felt like two hands of death were reaching in and grabbing all of my organs and pulling them out. Like the physical pain was staggering. I mean, I was really astounded myself. And then I had this thought, maybe I can save the marriage.
Mm.
And by 5 o'clock in the morning, I was back home in bed with my husband. And I
Interesting.
didn't leave again. And for 8 months, I went through the inner torment of what's wrong with me? Why am I not strong enough? Um, I should be able to figure this out. Like all of those things that are part of the inner critic coming up to be dealt with. And then dealing with this, like the fear and really understanding it. And I'll tell you what I did, Dr. Mel. I was very diligent and intentional about something that I now call grooming my vibration upward.
Mm.
So I started naturally waking up in the middle of the night, around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would go out into my living room and sit in my meditation chair, and I would spend a good hour just going into a meditative state. Sometimes I would use some guided imagery, but a lot of times it's like a good meditation music, and let my own thoughts reveal to me the path that I needed to go. And I started to get images and visions and started to nurture the ideas of, what would it be like to not be in this relationship? What's actually happening in the fabric of the relationship that I need to have insight into? How do I retrain my nervous system to be stabilized and strong within myself without having to have attachment to another human being, in particular to my former husband.
Mm.
And so it was hours and hours and hours, night after night after night, of doing this inner work. And that created a healing effect, sort of like filling in some of the holes that fear had been occupying, releasing that and allowing my own inner fortification to build. And then that created this building, almost like this crescendo. And the peak of that was that thought, Jennifer, just go make more money.
Mm.
And so it was all of that behind the scenes. So I think that there is something really important to note here that, certainly can epiphany moments and breakthrough moments come through organically? Absolutely. And yet, for people who are going through these kinds of catalyzed change, where there's a lot happening in your life and things are happening either internally that are pulling you in another direction or externally that are pushing you in another direction, like when you can go inside and start to nurture your own energy around it, that's what helps move things along.
Yes. Yes. And what I'm hearing thank you for sharing because I 100% agree with you. Like you're consciously creating your life, right? You are consciously doing and building the energy for that moment versus again, just staying in the pattern of like, well, I wonder when life's gonna, hit me with a Mack truck. Cause it's either, hey, listen to the tap on the shoulder, which like you said, could come in the form of physical sensations, jobs, relational things, just those little patterns. But if you don't listen to the tap on like, hey, or the whisper, as I say, it can often come in a much bigger, as I call it, feedback loop
Yeah.
from the universe of like, yo, your alignment is number one. And what I hear you saying, which is so vital and so important that I want the audience to get, is how you're navigating your inner world, or as you say, your inner alignment, because life is that inside out game, right? So when it comes to this ability to transmute the fear, because there is a level where fear can serve, but we don't want to stay there. What has helped you or even the clients that you work with when it comes to navigating this turbulence, right? Because again, turbulence can serve as a wake up call, a catalytic moment. What helps us start to transmute this turbulence and fear? And I think it's also important to say, like, just because you're practicing your inner alignment doesn't mean you're not going to deal with challenges. But I think that the way that you navigate it can completely change the game when you learn some of these concepts. But what are some of the things that we and the listeners can start to look at when it comes to navigating fear in our own evolution, navigating the turbulence, right? Not having these catalytic moments keep consuming us.
I think I think there are a variety of things, and I think it's important to come from different angles.
Mhm.
So, for one thing, and I know you work with this a lot, is coming from the physical.
Yes.
And just helping people to have a nervous system that is not overly active, right? So that they've got greater emotional regulation.
Reach.
Yeah. And so from a physical, so there's that physical treatment that can be part of it just from,
Yep.
physiological and even biochemical perspective.
Yep.
I think some of it too, for me, is a lot of it is education, just knowing uh, what is fear? Like, really, how
Mm-hmm.
does it work as an energy in your system? What is the function of fear? Fear is useful.
Yep.
And how do you embrace it as a form of giving you information and not just something that's, like overtaking you?
Yeah.
So being able, I think one of the things that was most helpful for me in the story that I shared was after I'd had that night where I was just like in this absolute terror, um, I was relating it to someone, and she said, "Oh, you hit the terror barrier," and I was like, "Whoa, what? Like, what's that?"
Uh-huh.
And basically, it's the edge of your comfort zone where your nervous system will actually feel there's another vibration, there's another state of being that's there that we're not familiar with.
Yes.
Don't
Oh,
know
I
how
just
to
felt that in my
navigate,
body.
used to it. It's uncomfortable just because it's that different. We all have like a certain range of experiences we can tolerate. But once you start to hit the edge of that, your familiarity, your human system is just going to say, stop.
Yep.
Like don't go there because it wants to protect you because it wants homeostasis.
Yes.
So even being able to think about it in those terms, like, oh, it's just a thing. Like as soon as I heard Terry Berry, I was like, it's a thing. I can deal with a thing. Like once it had been named, I was like, okay, so how do I like what do I do with this shit? Like how do we do it? And then I did, And so a lot of it was then that grooming and retraining my system
Yeah.
to be operating. I say at a higher level. I don't like to actually use like higher and lower, but I think that's the best language we have.
Yeah.
I think maybe more expansive level would
Yeah.
be a way of saying it. And I feel like I just took like a tangent on your
No,
question.
that was beautiful because it's making me, and tangents are welcome on this
Okay,
podcast,
yeah.
right? Totally. You and I could jam on this for hours, but it makes me think about expansion, right? That terror barrier. It makes me, because I'm such a nerd of like the microcosm and the macrocosm, when electrons pop in and out of valence shells, they're actually changing energetic states in the matter. And so the electron goes from one valence shell, if you guys remember from chemistry 101 of school, it goes from one valence shell to the next layer and it pops up to a different energy state, which requires us to, same for us, that expansion into that next layer, level, sphere, whatever terminology you want to use. But that's what I think of is literally when an electron does that, the atom actually emits a different energetic frequency, which then changes what the matter is just by popping up to that. And it's making me also think of, I'm just getting back from Costa Rica, depending on when you guys are listening to this. It's 2024, it's March. And I shared this with Jennifer and a couple of my close friends. I was like, my edges were cracked the fuck open in this whole experience of going to Costa Rica in all the beautiful ways. And because I've learned this a lot from you and other mentors, it's like it's part of my expansion of being a leader, of being on purpose with my mission. And was it challenging? Yes, but now I went beyond the terror barrier of bringing 15 people to another country, and like here I am back in Minnesota, I did it and I'm operating at a whole new frequency. So I think I just want to share like personally, even though Jennifer and I teach a lot of these things and different things, like we still go through it. Like we're still in a human body, right? Like we still, and her and I choose to challenge ourselves. Like we'll go to Orange Theory, or when we're together, even we choose these things. So anyway, I digress. I love it because I'm now just geeking out with you.
I love it. So that just to come back to your point about the electrons jumping, they have to build up a certain amount of energy to make the jump.
Yep.
So if we use my story as an example, that 8 months of all of that meditative work, that inner work, that healing and clearing, that was that buildup. And when the thought came in, just go make more money, that's like that jump.
Yes.
Because after that one thought, I'm like, I can't go back.
Yep.
I cannot go back to, and everything moved then. Like within 4 weeks.
Wow.
My whole life was different. It went really, really fast. And I was able to tolerate it.
Yeah.
There was still discomfort, but I was able to tolerate it because I'd done all of that healing work up until then to prepare for that next level.
And that's some of the, and I'm so glad you mentioned that again, because that's some of the stuff that we don't see behind the scenes, but we see people making like a quantum leap, or we see people popping into a new layer and level. However, you know, unless they were living with you, they maybe weren't seeing you getting up almost every single morning. And I know you still do this. Like when we hang out, you're still doing, this is your framework, your daily alignment practices. Like you still do it and you're very diligent. And that's what allows the popping, because you're building the energy. And a lot of people think it's just going to happen. But again, it's the daily practices that can really allow those moments to happen, right?
It really does. And for me, daily alignment practice is about nurturing your human relationship with your own soul. The higher aspect of you that you can't see, hear, smell, taste, or touch, but you feel it, you know it's there, it's guiding you. The assumption here is that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and that spirit or soul aspect of you cannot actively engage in the world without you.
Yep.
Right? Without your human partnership and your human parentage. And so part of that partnership is nurturing your own energy, taking care of yourself, and doing what's needed to release old trauma, old pains. Fear is always going to be there, so might as well make it a friend, you know? And then cultivating the practices that will help you sustain that and will help stabilize your energy, because you know you're relying on you.
Yeah.
Because you're building your own inner fortification, your reliability with yourself, and also opening yourself to get your own higher wisdom into your conscious mind, because it's always there. It lives in what we call the superconscious, which would be the level of your soul. But your conscious brain mind is what you're using primarily, in a lot of ways, to navigate the earth. Subconscious mind is always at work as well. That's where we have habits and perpetual behaviors and those kinds of things, but it's those working together. So being able to get information and energy coming through the superconscious, that's what really can help catalyze things and can help make your experience a lot more fluid and more enjoyable, no matter what.
Yeah, I hope chiropractors listening to this are starting to make the connections of like, oh, this sounds a lot like, you know, in chiropractic, we say like the healing is within you. It's always been within you. It's just unlocking it. Same, right? Like it's available. You know, you're in your living room, you get that download. You weren't at a seminar. It wasn't external. It was inside out, because of the nourishing and the calibration back to yourself and having enough self-worth to choose to do that, right? I think I see a lot of people where they maybe have, and I know this is a realm you play in and support people in, is increasing their self-worth, their self-value, where some people I think don't even feel worthy of like, oh, meditating or going for walks or being in nature or some of these daily alignment practices, maybe feel like, oh, but am I even worth that time? Right? Like we give away our time and energy so much. And it's like, yeah, like your alignment is priceless. You know, it's really priceless. So when it comes to, again, for the audience, the navigating turbulence and fear. So number one, I'm hearing is the educating yourself, right? Number two, having some sort of building a practice. Is there anything more you want to speak to that? And I know you have resources and things like that, but is there anything more you want to speak to that when it comes to the cultivation of that?
I do. About, you mean cultivating the daily alignment practice?
Yeah. Or anything when it comes to the educating. I think to me, the way that I've worked with you is I see it going hand in hand, like the education of knowing that things are a thing, learning, like, okay, yeah, there's a terror barrier. Cool. Now what? But just anything more to speak to those first 2 points that would be valuable.
Well, let me speak to something about this idea of worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's a template of worthiness that humans are working through right now, because that dovetails with the victim
Mm-hmm.
mentality,
Yep.
right? And I think that there's like a lot of people struggle with this sense of worthiness, and they battle with their inner shoulds, how they should be, what they should do or shouldn't be, shouldn't do. And worthiness is something that it's inherent.
Mm.
You don't have to earn it. You're born worthy. And yet, because we're tribal creatures, the awareness and the knowing and recognition of our own worthiness gets trained out of us, because the messaging during our developmental years is you need to behave like X, Y, and Z, so I'm happy, right? This is how you're supposed to behave within your family, within the school system that you're in, within whatever tribes you're a part of. And it's rarely the message of, you're so worthy. What's important to you? Let me hear you. And so everybody to some degree has this experience of unworthiness. So I think worthiness, like claiming your worthiness, has to be a decision.
Yep.
Really something. And again, these experiences are also designed to push you to your edges, where at some point you're like, this, like, I am not living like this anymore. Like, y'all need to show up for me,
Yep.
right? Like, y'all need to, whatever. And putting your stake in the ground, because people in the outer world will reflect back to you your perspectives and your beliefs about yourself.
Yep.
So when you want to have that external change and new experiences, starting here and saying, okay, what do I want to do with my worthiness? Right? Like, how do I want to be with it? Starting to cultivate that as its own relationship
Mm.
is its own thing, because really what we're talking about is your relationship with your soul.
Yep.
It's your relationship with your higher self. And so going through these challenging experiences will really push you to start to look at that and question it, in a sense of evaluating. How have I been with this? What do I want to do with this? No one's going to claim my worthiness for me, so nobody's just going to give it to me. So what do I want to explore within myself around that?
Mm.
So I think that that's a really important point here, because it is a lot of people. Am I worthy of the time? Am I worthy of the goodness or whatever? It's like, you're damn right you are, right? Like, it's not even a question. The only question is, do you want to choose that?
Right. Do you want to reclaim it
Do
and
you want
claim
to?
it?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
reclamation is preach girl. Like, woo, let's go. Reclamation is a never ending process, because it's those catalytic moments that we spoke to earlier that are an attempt at us remembering our worthiness. As you said, at birth, it's there, right? And we go through fragmentation, we go through trauma, we go through these things. And at some point, guess what? The universe is still in cahoots with you, and it's attempting at every moment to crack you open and be like, hey, do you remember? Like, you don't have to search for your worthiness anymore. Like, you are worthy. You are that. And those catalytic moments can be the cracking open to help you remember like who you truly are and what you're truly made of, right?
Absolutely. So now, I don't think we've spoken yet that well, maybe we said it in my bio, but I work in the Akashic Records.
Mm-hmm.
The Akashic Records is sort of like the library or the cloud for the soul. So all the information about your soul's journey is housed or stored in your Akashic record. And something you just said, Dr. Mel, made me think about that. Oh, so here's one thing that I think is interesting to think about is, when we come into this lifetime, your little spiritual being comes into this human body that you have. There's something called spiritual amnesia.
Mm.
And it's where you forget who you are. You forget that soul aspect of you. You'll feel it, you'll be guided by it, but you don't necessarily remember past lives or soul's intentions or people in your soul group or things like that. And so going through the process of living life is in and of itself a process of remembrance. It's a journey of rediscovering who you are, connecting on a conscious level with your own inner being. And then also discovering it in the outer world in terms of things that you like, things you enjoy, places you want to go, experiences you want to have, people you want to connect with. Like one of our greatest joys in life is connecting with people who are soul family for us. The ones that you just have that instant click, that you immediately know, oh, you're my people. And a lot of times that's not family. It's not
No, it's not biological. It's so logical.
Yeah.
I just made that up.
So logical.
So logical. You can have that term.
Yeah. So, like for example, Mel and I, soul family.
Yep.
Sure. Just had that instant click. Like we could just sit down and immediately talk about everything. And it's something that's carried on now. We're pushing 10 years, you know, and we can go for long periods of time without connecting. She lives in Minnesota. I'm in Florida, and maybe we see each other a little bit on social media. But as soon as we're in the same room together, it's like no time passed. We're both ready for snacks and parties.
Yeah, and bacon.
Yeah. That doesn't matter whose house we're at either.
So, and podcasts. I love that. I love this conversation so much. Something that you said that I want to highlight is the reflection of the world back to us. And something that I love that we always talk about is we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so as we work on our own inner alignment, you'll start to see the world differently, which is such a beautiful process on this journey of life, of that remembering and having more joy and having more curiosity and having more access to those different states that I know you speak to, and you have a lot of frameworks about that. But it can be such, you know, as you were speaking, I'm like, man, life is such a gift, and life can be fun even in the challenge, like you said. And you've been a big part of that in my life, of not of starting to look at things differently, of starting to have this consciousness, even in some of the chaos that I personally deal with as, like I said, an entrepreneur, owning multiple businesses, having a lot of clients, especially as a chiropractor, working with really intense cases. I think everything that you're speaking to from my vantage point has just helped me have so much more curiosity and fun and play in it, and less of like the mediocrity and boringness of life. And it's okay to be bored. And, you know, I'm up to big things on the planet. And I will say too, one thing I wanted to mention as well in the Akashic work is, if y'all have not done any sort of Akashic work, it has been a game changer for me. I've had multiple sessions with Jennifer, and I think pretty much every time I cry, and I don't know, you're just so gifted at that. So if you haven't, make sure you get in her world and experience that, because especially if you're a healer, a leader, a creative, an entrepreneur, this is the secret sauce that I think more people are talking about. Because it's one thing to know like business strategy and to have the systems and the operations. It's another when you can get your spiritual alignment on par with your human experience, with the SOPs. Ooh, that would be a fun thing. You've got like spiritual, like you should play with that, like SOP, different, not systems and operating procedures, but like spiritual something. Anyway, this is what happens when we get together, is we
started downloading
in the middle of a podcast. I'm telling you, you guys, you get around this woman and you just start downloading, and you're like, what the fuck is happening? But it's that energy state, right? It's just the building of it. And when you're in proximity to your soul fam, it's like, like you said. Anyway, I digress.
And then that helps open the channel for higher frequency information to come in. And this is information that is part of your birthright. So everybody's always accessing their own Akashic records. Let's just say that, like, period. Mm-hmm. So anytime that you have an insight, you have intuition, you have an inspired thought, those kinds of things, you feel like your body's kind of like moving you in a certain direction, and it just kind of like took you by surprise. That's coming from your Akashic records. That's part of your inner guidance. It's built in, and you're worthy of it. It's just part of your birthright. So, so I wanted to say that about the Akashic records. Let me also pause here. We're in our conversation just to give some perspective to alignment.
Yeah.
Because I think when people hear alignment, I always hear like alignment, like they think either like your spine or like your tires in your car. And
Which
I'm like,
both are valid and necessary, and there's way more to it.
yeah. So this is inner alignment. Um, and it's a spiritual alignment. So you're in alignment fundamentally when you feel good, you feel clear, you feel calm, you feel balanced. And feeling good exists on a spectrum. So you can have feeling good of neutrality, like you're just chill.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the feeling good of curiosity, like you want to discover something. You can have the feeling good of excitement, joy, happiness, peacefulness, elation, love, right? There's a whole spectrum to that. And then you have feeling bad. And feeling bad also exists on a spectrum. You have different kinds of feeling bad, whether it's fear, sadness, anger, powerlessness, grief, guilt, like these kinds of things. And a lot of those particular feelings are important information. They carry important information that are indicators to you about where you're at and how you're navigating your life in terms of action or in terms of your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So your emotions always give you information. And when you're in alignment with your soul's journey, there's going to be a pretty fluid flow of the information coming through. And even the negative stuff, the stuff that we call feeling bad, it serves.
Yeah.
Like it has an important function. Like if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you want to have a startle response and slam on your brakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, healthy fear.
Yes.
Right? When it starts to become distorted, we bottle it up, we replay arguments in our head, we stay in cycles of sadness or anger or fear, and we don't process it and release it. It becomes distorted, and now you have things like anxiousness, depressiveness, rage, like you've got worthlessness.
Yeah.
You've got this distorted version. So Mel, I've got a really great tool to kind of like a visual to give you a sense of what this is. It's called the inner alignment spectrum. And it's something that we can actually go ahead and provide that I can give you for that. Does that work?
Yep, absolutely. So for those of you, anyone I bring on here, they have great resources. So we'll make sure to drop that inner alignment spectrum in the show notes of this episode. So make sure you grab that. So you can take a look at this and reflect on for your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that you can just know that it's always fluid. We're always moving through different states of being, and your emotions give you information about where you're at and what you need in order to recover back into those higher states. So, so just very briefly, like that's alignment. When we're talking about Akashic work, information is always coming through the Akashic field. And so you're always being guided. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about that based on what you had said, but
Let's grab it from the field. As far as with my experience, that was prompting you. Yeah.
So I would say like having someone who's a trained professional who can help you interpret your Akashic records or receive energy perfectly templated for you through your Akashic records, that's something that it's its own special experience, because a lot of people will come in with questions about their lives, life purpose, relationships, business, big decisions they have to make, family stuff, parenting, how to work with their kids, things about their physical health and well-being. And part of my role as an interpreter of the Akashic records is to open their records, let them ask their questions, and then I'm just kind of like fluidly giving the information. And most people say, okay, I kind of felt that. Or yeah, that really resonates. Or I knew that on some level, because again, you're getting information from your own records, but you're still human. So you've got your conscious monkey mind. I mean, how many times have you had an intuitive experience and you're like, nah. And later you're like, damn, I should have listened. So it's just being able to be someone who's an additional voice direct from we call them the keepers of the Akashic records, or the illumined beings that help transmit that information, that protect your records.
Yeah.
And so being able to get information from there and energies coming through is incredibly informative. It's very healing. It can help you have a lot of peace and a lot of clarity, especially like if it comes to big decision making. So, for example, if I work with my entrepreneurs or creatives, healer, like everybody, whatever you're working in terms of like a business or maybe a creative project, all of those things are their own consciousness. So they have an Akashic record. So frequently, I will open the record of the business or open the record of the project and see what information is there so that then we look at the different potentials in the field for how you can direct your energy, choices you can make, that kind of thing, that then gives you information about how to move forward with whatever it is that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, y'all, this has been a game changer for me. Again, running multiple businesses, having a lot of visionary ideas, and just like you said so beautifully, there's a level of like our knowing it's there. And any sessions I've had with you, it's just like, like, yes, like the ability to keep trusting my intuition has, I think, been one of the biggest benefits I've gained in those sessions is like, I knew this and, I didn't have to do it alone. And being able to work with someone who has supported me in that deeper knowing, right? I was like, I like I said, most of the sessions I cry tears of gratitude because it's like, yes, like this is what I felt, this is what I knew deep down, but there was a level of like inaccessibility to it, which again, that clarity to me is invaluable and priceless. And I love what you're speaking to, and you and I would both agree in this, and the way that we guide people differently is you don't have to do this alone. And it can be so healing and so supportive to have people who, number one, have not only had the lived experience, but are also walking their talk and also have expertise with people who have gone through similar, slightly different journeys. And I will say, and maybe this is my own protection of Akashic work, I'm not sure, but this is not something that anyone can do. Like, yes, you can access it, but there's training, right, involved in becoming a master Akashic practitioner. And like you said, we're in cahoots with it all the time. And it, again, y'all, it is a game changer. We can work with someone who has the level of expertise and training and knowledge and skill set to do so, not just from that realm, but your background too of understanding the brain, understanding psychology, understanding the physical component, right? So you really get all of it with Jennifer, y'all. And that's not just a plug. That's like my own lived experience with her.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's something I've been doing for a number of years. It's funny because I haven't thought about that story about going through my divorce for a while, but bringing it up today, I'm recalling that at that time, I was working with my own Akashic Records practitioner, and I was on the phone with her like every like few weeks. Like, what do I do now? Because all the potentials of what you can live, what is within your soul's agenda, it's housed within the Akashic field. So if we're going to speak in more scientific terms, we could say in the matrix, the
Mhm.
quantum field,
Yep.
um, the unified field. So all of the potentials that you can live are there. Sort of like if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Yeah.
You get to the end of the page and it's like, go on your honeymoon, turn to page 27. To enter the dragon's lair, turn to page 5.
Yes.
Right? And so,
Great analogy.
yeah. So basically, it's like you're always making choices, right? And the choice then, determines like what is the next lived experience? What is the next lived experience? And so I remember I kept calling my Akashic Records practitioner at the time and saying, what do I do now? But it really got me through because I was getting into the energies of the records, which is an energy of pure love, pure light. It's a very cleansing, healing space. And also I was getting guidance specific from my soul's journey.
Yeah.
And a lot of things I already knew, but I was like, but how am I going to do this? But again,
Right.
during that building up fortification period. And then after I completed going through that, the whole divorce process and everything, at some point she reached out to me and invited me and said, Jennifer, I'm going to be training people to access the Akashic Records. And I was like, done, I'm in. And now this is already a number of years ago, and I've been doing it. I did a essentially 2-year deep dive study with her and became master practitioner, master healer. And then within a few months, people started coming to me and asking me, Jennifer, well, I want to learn to read the Akashic Records. I said, oh, great, I'll introduce you to the speaker. They said, no, I want you to do it. I was like, well, I don't do that. And then when I had two clients within like proximity of like a week, they didn't know each other. They just both randomly came and said that they wanted this. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, like, I get it. If something's coming in that much proximity to each other, like unsolicited, I know it's part of guidance.
Yeah.
So I just looked at it and I said, okay, how about you ladies meet each other? If you have good chemistry, I'm open to it. Like, we can try it. Just know that it's a pilot. I haven't done it before. And we did it. And of course, it ended up being like fluid and seamless and amazing. And ever since then, I've been taking pretty small groups, but mostly of women, and training them to access the Akashic Records. So it's something that it's part of my practice in terms of like as a practitioner, as a healer, and as a consultant. But then also it's something that I teach women to do as well.
I love that. And again, that's being open to it, right? Our mind can think that there's a certain way, and yet our soul, has, I don't want to say a different agenda, but maybe an even more aligned experience with it. Like random clients showing up, like, okay, didn't think about this, but it's showing up. Here it is. I'm going to pay attention to it. And something that I love about the Akashic Records is I feel like there's this ability that you have of really just showing people and being a channel for what they already know, and being that mirror back to them with such skill and expertise. And it's like nothing I've ever experienced. So again, I'm just a huge advocate of it. And that you also train people like, okay, this is resonating. Like, how do I start to master this myself? So I think that's really important as we're speaking on this point of not having to do it alone, having guides along the way. And perhaps if it's something that's resonating with you, I don't know if you're doing this at the moment, but maybe this is a path that you take. Because I know there's a lot of people in the audience who are having big career shifts, and recognizing their gifts and recognizing some of these things and asking, okay, who's a trusted guide out there that can maybe teach me how to become masterful, whether it's the Akash or not. But I'm curious if there's any more to speak on when it comes to having guides, hiring someone, not doing it alone, or things like that on navigating the turbulence of our own evolution.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people bump into when they start to go through an awakening experience, or they're going through all this turbulence that's a natural part of pushing them forward, is it's normal to feel very lonely.
Yeah.
And to want to isolate. And I think there's a time and a place for that, because it is a very personal journey. And yet at the same time, I'm also going to say it's important to not do it completely alone. Yeah. So whether it's working with a practitioner who's a guide, like myself, like Dr. Mel, I know you help people a lot more than just with the alignment, but with your coaching, but doing any kind of Akashic Records work. I also do inner alignment coaching. Having someone who knows how to hold that space for you and with you and walk alongside you in that journey, to give you tools, to give you space to just be, to witness you in your experience, and to point you in directions that can be beneficial for you. You're going to discover it yourself, right? But it's with someone who knows the path, who's walked it, and who has helped other people through it. I think it's important too to look for community. Because yes. Usually what happens too is when you go through this kind of turbulence or like a disturbance in your field, the people in your sphere who you have previously resonated with, there won't be the same kind of resonance with them.
Yeah.
It's very common. And part of that is because you're going to be surrounded by people who the sole agreement that you've had with them is that they're going to stay very sort of like aloof about spiritual expansion, at least during the phase of your expansion. And they're kind of like holding that third dimensional plane for partly for you to have your to have your expansion, but to kind of help catalyze that. So
Yeah.
you're naturally going to start looking for other people who are going through similar experiences. And there are a lot right now, but people are less likely to be talking about it or be open about it because it's kind of like sometimes seems like a weird thing or very woo woo or like socially, we all know the, hey, how you doing? Great. How you doing? Great. And like, that's it. And
That's
everyone
it.
on the
Yep.
inside, but on the inside, you're just like, this is a shit day or like whatever, but we put on that happy face.
Uh-huh.
Right. So it's kind of hard to tell. But when you have communities like Dr. Mel's community, you have a phenomenal community.
Thank
And you have people who are kind of in that similar realm of open, being more open to having these kinds of conversations. Consider me a resource. We'll give information to connect with me on social media and website and all of that. And I love connecting people. Like I love bringing people together. Like, oh, you should talk to so and so, because that just kind of helps give you a more expansive social circle. Because again, it's so normal for coworkers that you used to vibe with, family members you used to vibe with. And I think it's really important to say that it's okay to go through a phase of kind of creating a little bit more buffer.
you. Yep.
It doesn't have to be a complete separation, but it's okay to start saying no and setting some more clear boundaries with family members, with, could be old friends, again, like colleagues, that kind of thing, but people who you just kind of aren't vibing with right now, and trust that it can come full circle,
Yep.
right? So being able to set boundaries in a way that's clear, that's resonant for you, and that still honors the relationship. Because sometimes people like they're just really kind of clueless, like they just don't know. They don't
Right.
know how to respond. They don't know what to do. And so being able to step away and create space for yourself to do your growth, um, to be able to do that elegantly, I think that that's important. And that's where getting good support by people who have gone through that and are able to provide guidance around that. That's also really important. I'm curious what you think, Dr. Mel.
I am a huge advocate of that. In fact, I was just listening to a woman that I follow on Instagram where she said, and I think it resonates really well with what you're speaking to, is do not underestimate the value of someone who knows how to hold a container that allows for this. Because I think a lot now with AI and the whole world of marketing and sales, that can look really great from the outside, but do not underestimate the value of someone who is an expert at holding a container of community and being able to navigate these things, right? When we go into our turbulence, our deep dark edges, our cocoons, what I'm hearing is like it can be important to cocoon sometimes, not to completely separate yourself from society, but learn how to set those healthy boundaries and create the cocoon in your own metamorphosis so that you can emerge on the other side and know that you've had support along the way and people who know how to hold the container and be a space of witnessing, be a space of hearing. That's a lot that I teach in the Project Lioness cohort is how do we actually give feedback in a way that is received and not advice dumping or people projecting. And I think that goes sometimes overlooked when people choose to invest in themselves, invest in guides and mentors and coaches. Like there is a huge value to someone who can hold the container and actually teach you. I know that's something I learned a lot from you is how do you communicate these things, right? If you need to set a boundary with family or friends, how do you communicate that in a loving way that is from that space of, hey, this is where I'm at right now. Thank you for seeing me and I've had to communicate that with certain family members when I feel less capacity to be in that relationship at the moment, knowing that there's seasons, right? There's seasons, and that's life where sometimes we feel like a little caterpillar in a cocoon, and other times we have so much capacity and we're flying our wings and nothing affects us. But to be able to have a container and a coach and a community who can hold that space in all those different dimensions is huge. So that's what I would speak to
Yeah,
what
it's the
you're speaking to.
equivalent to, like having a ship out in the rocky seas in the middle of a storm and just sitting back and letting the wheel spin itself, as opposed to having somebody who can go hold the wheel and you can help navigate where are we going.
Oh, yeah.
because it's your journey, but to have somebody who can kind of help stabilize, create stabilization for you.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
they themselves have also lived it. And they're like,
There's something
yeah,
I want to say, Dr. Mel. We're all still going through like different phases of this. We could call it ascension or awakening or expansion, evolution, myself included.
yeah,
And so we're just going through it in different phases of the journey. And so you want someone who's, a few stages beyond where you've been or
yeah,
whatever you're navigating. And so, but it is something that, for me, again, walking my talk, being able to take what I know and apply it in my personal relationships, like boundary setting, it's something I still have to do. I had to do that this morning with my mom. My mom and I had an extremely turbulent relationship and really have just started to rebuild in the last few years. We have many years of separation, lots of issues there with, substance use and trauma when I was 16 when I got kicked out of the house. My parents were divorced. It was a lot of stuff without going into the details about that. And so, because we had a pretty significant rupture, it's something that it's still a process of rebuilding, even though we are close now, closer than we've ever been. But sometimes I still, get triggered by certain things because there's still a portion of the healing journey that I'm still in, and that's okay.
yeah,
And so, being able to communicate and say, Mom, I love you. I love seeing you. I need it to be this time frame, not this time frame. Right. And just giving information. I'm still working through some of these things. And I don't want the emotional experience I'm working through to come out at you negatively.
yes.
I would feel better if we spent a weekend together, not a week.
Mhm.
And so there's still this inclusiveness. I love you, and I need to have more clarity around what I can tolerate at this time, what feels good, what feels aligned. And so being able to be clear about those things and speak that. I was actually reflecting on that this morning as I was getting ready for this wonderful time with you, Dr. Mel. Um, so often people, we humans, are sloppy and careless and reckless in the relationships with the people that we're closest because we take them for granted.
Mm.
And I think those are the relationships that we need to hold most sacred and take the best care of. Everyone can be in a bad mood and put on a happy face for, a work meeting or a client or a neighbor or somebody else. But then all of a sudden we're around our personal close people, spouses, children's, family, etc. And now we let our uglies out. Nothing wrong with expressing your feelings and yet being conscientious that you have an impact on others too. It's not just how they impact you in your life. And being able to build an arsenal is a strong word, a repertoire of skill sets and tools that you can just kind of pull out to say, okay, I need a framework for communicating with mom today, or I need a way to manage my energy so I can be stabilized and peaceful with my children today, or whatever it is, right? But just starting to like build your own um, set of tools, and some of that is being able to invest in a coach or different programs that call to you so that you can start to really become masterful at navigating your internal world and taking charge and responsibility for it, even when emotions are in flux.
Yes.
Curious
Oof.
your thoughts, Dr. Mel, on that. That was another little
No,
tangent.
that was like a perfect download because you were speaking to exactly what I was thinking. I remember the last session I had with you, I think I had mentioned, or maybe it was just in the conversation, I was navigating some uh, challenges I was feeling with hanging out with my grandparents. And something that you shared with me of a different way of looking at it was huge. And you know what? That night we went to their house, we had dinner with them, and it was a totally different experience simply because I shifted my own inner alignment around it. And I think it can be so easy to go into annihilation of like, I'm triggered, I don't want you in my life. And we go into massive like cancel culture. And I have had to really look at this for myself of like, okay, deep down, I love my parents. I love my grandparents. My family had a lot of instability growing up. So, and I've shared this very openly on podcasts, like family isn't always my number one value, but I'm also not the person that's trying to exile my family because I know they're there for me no matter what. I have had to work through how I navigate the relationship and some of these tools and frameworks you're speaking to that I remember learning from you in different circles and different programs I've done with you is so huge. And it doesn't mean I need to hang out with my parents every single day. I know people where their parents are their best friends. That's just not my reality. However, I also am not living in the reality of annihilating and completely canceling myself because then that leaves me like I feel alone and I feel that's just not the way I want to live. And you can have both is what I'm hearing. And I think you're such a person who is so masterful at being in relationships as well as like navigating your own relationship with yourself. And it's something I'm always learning from you and really appreciative of our friendship is like just your masterfulness and your artistry of, and I think it just is who you are. I'm not saying like this is something you're like, I know it takes work for you and you're just so great at it because it's who you are. Like you exude that ability to navigate relationships with integrity because you are continuously working on that integrity with yourself. And it's something I strive to do, right? I'm definitely will default to anger. So I've gotten better and learned. But it's so true, right? Like we're in relationships and it can be so easy to just exile the people that we do deep down really, really love, but we haven't learned how to be in it, like you said.
Or we're just riding the waves.
Yeah.
So much of our growth comes through the context of relationships, whether somebody's present in your life or not, because
Right.
relationships aren't.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's all podcast part two.
I think the one thing that I'll say to kind of punctuate where we're at is, when you're going through whatever you're going through, any kind of turbulence, any kind of phase of expansion, um, it's okay. Like, it's okay to just let it be. Like, sometimes the best way to get to the other side of it is just to be where you are, to sort of surrender, embrace what's happening. It's just part of life. And if you can find a way to kind of neutralize it so you don't have so much emotional, like the angst of like it being a problem is sometimes worse than it's a problem.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So being able to release that part and just be in the experience, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just life, babe. And you're a dynamic being. You're growing, you're expanding. You can't stop it. If you stop it, it means you're shrinking, you're going backwards.
And
Right.
you'd be
And my
dead.
guess is that if you're the kind of person that's here, that's connected with me and or with Dr. Mel, you're the kind of person that's really about expansion in your life.
Yeah. Where can people find you as we wrap up our episode?
Yeah, so I think the best thing is my website. It's jenniferalley.com. I know that Dr. Mel will have it in the show notes. One thing that I would love to make available, Dr. Mel, for anyone who's been tuning in is if you're feeling like any of this conversation is really resonant and you'd like us to connect personally, you're actually welcome to go ahead and book on my calendar and set up about like a 20 to 30-minute call just so we can get to know each other. If there's something that I can do to serve you and help you, I'd be happy to talk about that. Or if there are other resources I can point you to, I'd be happy to do that as well.
That is very generous of you. Thank you. Because I know how conscious you are of like time,
your
energy.
community.
Yeah, we love you. So what we'll do, y'all, as we wrap this up, because we've got energy to get into for the day. Like I said, we could keep going on for hours. As you can tell, we can jam on so many things, but we're going to drop the alignment spectrum, the inner alignment spectrum in the show notes. That's Jennifer's gift to you. We're going to drop her website as well as a link to schedule that call. And then anything else, Instagram.
Instagram, yes, you can find me on Instagram as The Sexy Guru. No dots, no spaces, all one word. Remember to include the, because if you don't know the and you just start with sexy guru, you're going to find all sorts of other.
She is the sexy guru, y'all. Not just a sexy guru. Okay. Don't forget it. Anything else?
That's the social I'm most active on at this time.
Yeah.
So anything else, you can find everything on my website.
And if you really are looking for some good spiritual memes, Jennifer is your gal.
Oh yeah, for sure. My stories are off the hook.
She has great stories. So go follow her, check her out, check out all the free stuff. You will not be disappointed. Anything else, my friend, you want to share?
I'm just so happy to be here. I'm happy to connect with your community. Always love my time with you, my dear. And we could jam it. I think I'm kind of feeling like we should probably put together like a few days kind of event for people.
Oh, if that would
for a while. We haven't done it yet.
If y'all are feeling that, drop in the comments like event and we'll put something together. We've been jamming on it. So maybe it's time. The little insights are popping in our brain and our consciousness.
Yeah. Awesome.
I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you for just being a friend, a leader, a mentor, and just an amazing woman on the planet. I'm so honored to do this life with you.
I love you so much. Back at you, babe.
Yay.
Badass lioness, babe.
Rawr. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. So grateful you could join this conversation with Jennifer. And as always, we love and appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Peace, love, and keep inspiring. See you next time. Bye. Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.